Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to day 9 here at Earth University. Back at one of my favorite spots, right by the water. Beautiful day. So today's topic will be organized crime and secret groups or organizations, clubs, societies. Could even go as far as calling them like covens or just groups of individuals who get together without there's an exclusivity factor to it. Just put it that way. So before I get started on that, do the daily announcements like always. So yeah, I posted 3 paintings today. First one was called Protection from the Rain, which is a painting of my daughter holding an umbrella in the rain. And that's when I really start digging into the idea that what I'm dealing with and the group that's opposed to me are into, they're living double lives. They're into things that they don't show the outside world. People will be shocked when they actually find out the things they're involved in. Then Are You Aware is another painting of an owl that article is kind of a message to these people about just how an owl represents knowledge and also is like a great observer in nature who is always watching and has a lot of significance in the spiritual world. So I send a little message to this group about just how much I knew the whole time that they were continuing to do this stuff, and make it clear to them that I still know, and I know how this is going to end. So yeah, I highly recommend reading both of those. Like always, I have some songs that go along with the painting and the posts. Try to make everything work together to tell a story. And then I posted the original Team Up for Hope logo, which I give an explanation in Are You Aware of what the significance of the logo actually means and how it's actually a DNA strand. And there's 6 parts of Team Up for Hope that are represented by the hexagon and the 6 colors. And I go into a little bit of detail how that me working on the nonprofit, how it basically brought my attention to everything that was going on and allowed me to acquire the knowledge and the awareness to see it clearly, which ultimately ended up saving my life and allowing me to fulfill my purpose, which is to expose the things that are going on. So yeah, I would highly recommend taking a look at those if you haven't already. So I want to quick start off doing I'll just say organized crime first. Let me just talk a little bit about what people generally would picture with organized crime is like the cartel or, the mafia. But I think that's a flawed perspective to take, because truly organized crime is just any group of people who are calculated and think ahead and have a strategic plan that they use the tactics that they are good at using and the discipline to spend the time to basically commit these crimes very effectively and without drawing attention to themselves. That's the thing, is that they're organized, so it's not chaotic. They cover all their bases, and a lot of the organized crime in this country, in the world, has been those that involve multiple people in multiple different areas of, professions and stuff. You have police forces and the judicial system and CEOs, executives, and people in the music industry and Hollywood, and high powerful people throughout different businesses that, when they coordinate, collaborate, team up, they can basically they can write the narrative and then play it out the way they want it to play out, because they control all aspects of it. They're organized throughout all the different levels of the plan. There's usually not concern of a rogue investigator or whistleblower, because there's just the sheer numbers alone and the power, the money allows them to basically get away with everything and think that they're never going to get caught. So I talked about Prohibition and how Harry Anslinger was originally part of the Prohibition task force. Like, that was his big thing, was implementing Prohibition, even though the country clearly wasn't asking for it. There was really not like a huge push for Prohibition. It obviously got revoked and failed. The people spoke and it got overturned. But I also talked about how I was like Elliot Ness, not being able to be bought. And, he was the leader of the Untouchables, who brought down Capone and organized crime. I think it was the first time that they used the RICO Act to, they used the money instead of the murders to indict and bring charges against organized crime. So I was thinking, like, I already had this theory before. It's not even a theory, it's actually what happened. But the mob came to power in this country because of prohibition. The bootlegging and the demand for alcohol created an entire black market that these organized crime families filled the need. They, went to Canada and brought back booze, or, they manufactured it, whatever the case may be. But, like, if you watch Boardwalk Empire or whatever, like, all the government officials and local governments, and on a bigger scale, like, all of them had their hands in, like, the mob buys off the government. But I was actually thinking, like, could it be the other way around? That they implemented prohibition specifically to get rich off the illegal trade of alcohol. When you actually think that Henry Anslinger was involved, who spent 30 years basically doing corrupt things after that, it makes you wonder, was that part of the plan to begin with, is like take something away from the common people that they never asked to be taken away, and then provide the black market back channel way for these people to get it. And then, at that point, you can go arrest anybody at any time if you find them in a speakeasy or drinking at their house. They're breaking the law. So now you have power you have that extra control over people, that they're now breaking the law for doing something that they used to be allowed to do. Not saying that's what happened, just saying, knowing how things work, not a crazy idea to me that they could actually have the plan to just, when you have to buy, I would imagine buying the alcohol off of the black market and bootleggers, like, it's not as accessible. You can charge more to the people. I don't know the story of like what it took to actually get it revoked and put back, but obviously enough people fought for it to be revoked, so eventually they revoked it. My question is, like, I've never come across any any story that talks about how there was this huge push for it. The majority wasn't asking for it. So just makes you wonder if it was part of a bigger plan. But anyway, yeah, organized crime doesn't necessarily have to be. And just one last note on that is, like I said, that was the birth of the Italian mafia in this country. Probably other forms of mafia in this country, but the Italian one's the most well recognized, which you don't hear about the mob as much anymore. But I mean, up until the 80s, early 90s, like, I feel like that was still something that was going on, like the murders and stuff of different crime families going after each other and having public, like, whacking people, and at a restaurant. So you're talking almost 70 years later, this thing that you basically created, the demand for them to fill this, fill this void that was left when Prohibition got put into place. You let these groups come in and now have power, and they manage to, I'm sure they are still prevalent today, just in, maybe not the Italian mob as much so, but you obviously know the drug cartels and the various other groups that do criminal things in an organized fashion. If it happened with Prohibition, where, there's all these connections and stuff, once again, I find it naive to think that the same methods of operation still don't exist. It's like, I've been trying to teach you guys, history repeats these patterns of behavior and the way that they get away with things and do things. They follow the same script over and over again. The same stuff they were doing back in the early 1900s or late 1800s, or even back in the Egyptian days, I'm sure. Like, there's a method to their madness. But at the end of the day, it's still madness, because they don't think that there'll ever be any consequences. So it gives them this idea of them being the untouchable, that they're never going to get brought down because they have too many people on their payroll, or or collaborating with the same story. So they never think that anybody's going to be able to recognize underneath all of that illusion, all of that, for a lot of people it's probably very easy to fool them and not have them see how they truly operate. But myself and others out there who understand that, I know most people just, it's a term used to basically dismiss somebody who talks about anything that's not mainstream traditional view of things, that you're a conspiracy theorist. I still fail to see, and I haven't even said it, like any of this stuff actually happened for 100% certainty when it comes to like historical stuff. I'm just recognizing patterns and theorizing, knowing how the human brain works, especially with somebody who has these disorders. They're thinking, which I understand, how they would view something. And then I look at story after story of a historical event, and you see exactly how they thought they were going to pull it off. It's always the same thing. So, yeah, so organized crime's much more than just the mafia. I'm talking, it could be any, either recognized or not recognized. So, a lot of people might think I was reaching to even throw out the possibility that my in-laws and ex-wife and other people involved in my story could be part of some satanic cult, or, you don't have to look at it as a satanic cult if that is too much for you. They do, like, the spiritual warfare is real, whether you want to believe it or not. There is such a thing as voodoo and black magic and all the stuff. I never thought anything about it for 40 something years, but I didn't realize I was living it. I know what it feels like. It's been my life. I now understand. I can tell the difference now that I have the protection and know how to defend myself against it. That stuff exists. But if you can't get over a certain hurdle of it being like eyes wide shut with the robes and stuff, which I don't really know what it is. I've never been to a gathering when a bunch of people are doing dark satanic things, but I would imagine it probably is like that. But if you can't get there, you could just say it's a group that comes together, an organized group that meets in secret. It's exclusive. They don't want other people to know that they're conspiring. They have a plan that they are trying to implement and pull off, but fool the people. Like, not even, people wouldn't even suspect that there's any sort of ties or relationships between the people who are involved in this group. So it's just an exclusive, you have to get initiated, like, to be part of it, to know their secrets. But I don't find it to be such a huge leap of faith to think that. So when I first started dating my ex-wife, she was still in college. She had her graduation dinner party at the Union League in Center City, which is an exclusive members-only club for elites, which is just so happens to be very close to the Masonic Temple Library and Museum. They went to school in the city as well. Like I said, I've never been in any Masons clubs or Skull and Bones or Eastern Stars or Luciferians. I don't know, Rosicrucians. Like, there's been these types of organizations throughout time who come together and share knowledge and basically tricks and magic that they don't want the general people to know about, because they use to manipulate people. Nothing new. So anyway, yeah, they were part of the Union League in Sea Isle, where they own a house. They were part of the Commodores Club, and then later the Yacht Club, which, once again, members only. Yacht Club's like very prestigious thing to be a part of. Down in Florida, they're Club 33 members at Disney, so they have secret hideaways in all the parks that you can go to and get away from the normal people. They have private tours and everything. I used to be in the family, quote unquote, so I thought. But yeah, I've been to the places in Club 33. Like, I've benefited from their membership, but make no mistake, it's still a very elite club that you have to pay a lot of money to be a part of. It's an exclusive thing, and it's a networking thing where if you're a part of it, there's certain opportunities and deals that you get to make with other wealthy, exclusive people that, you could be walking around at the Disney parks and have no idea that right above you is like a hidden lounge that is got food and nice air conditioning, and as the rest of the people are like dying of heat exhaustion, waiting in lines and stuff, they can just pop in there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it was very nice. I used to love going there because I didn't love being around that many people, because like it drains me, those situations, the heat, everything. So like I myself took advantage of certain perks that came with that club. But the idea of paying a crazy amount just so that I could say that I was a part of it was something I never understood. But it's an exclusive factor, which is the same thing as the Reunion Club, where their home in Florida is located. A very prestigious, members only goth community. Then they both went to Drexel and are like big donors to the alumni club. They're big donors to Corpus Christi Catholic Church. Then their daughter and son went to prestigious private Catholic schools in Philadelphia, Notre Dame and St. Joe's Prep. So you start going down the list. Private schools, private clubs, exclusivity. Like, they tend to like joining clubs and being in groups. So, is it crazy to theorize that they could be in a secret one that people wouldn't suspect? I don't think so. I think that's a pretty fair use of deductive reasoning, that at the very least it's a possibility. So a lot of the stuff, like I didn't take too many notes for today because I know the general basics of most of the stuff that I talk about. So I will just spitball most of this, but I did take some on old Hollywood. So I wanted to talk about these secret organizations and these good old boys clubs, and the elite basically having meetings behind closed doors, and then what I think it looks like in the real world. So I talked yesterday that I would maybe touch on the movie industry and the music industry. So I'm going to do something like, we all know Harvey Weinstein and just all the stuff. Like, they call Los Angeles the city of fallen angels for a reason. It's, from the beginning, it turns people who are chasing their dream into people that they don't recognize. And you always see the drug abuse and the sex scandals, and just, I don't think I have to explain too much that it's basically corrupted and ruined many lives throughout history. But before that, real quick too, another thing is with organized crime in like Las Vegas, and just that whole entire city being like, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, like basically giving people free reign to make bad choices and then get back on the plane and go back to their families or homes. That's the marketing campaign for Las Vegas, which makes sense. It was built and run by the mob with the help of government organizations and people throughout the government who accepted the bribes and allowed all of it to happen. But I just wanted to make that quick point about Vegas being relevant when we're talking about organized crime. But I want to talk about like the Hollywood studios and executives and the music executives, and how it's all one big organized crime ring where they basically extort and steal from the truly talented people, the artists, the actors, musicians, who are the ones that actually have the talent to make them the money. But somehow, you know, the people who pull the strings are the ones who, and I'm not saying that like actors don't get paid handsomely and everything, but I want to talk about just how easily we've seen it with like Randy Quaid or Cat Williams or people who speak out against, and Dave Chappelle, like how easily you can get blackballed or blacklisted, or the spin zone that I talked about the other day can be used against you to take away your career if you don't play the game the way that they want. So I want to take a trip back to the 1920s Hollywood. Basically, when Hollywood became Hollywood, the local politicians and police were 100% like pro movie studio. If you ever saw Ray Donovan, like these studios had like the fixers, and they controlled the narrative of what happened with their actors and actresses, and they basically had the power to make or break somebody's career. So I wanted to talk about Adolph Zucker, who was the head of Players Lasky, which was the #1 studio back in the early 20s. So there was like all these scandals that happened through 1920 to 1924. One of the first ones was Olive Thomas, who was an actress. I think she starred in a movie called The Flapper, but very like popular. I don't know on what level like her comparison would be in today's day and age, but famous enough that people were shocked that this like overdose story came out about her. She had squeaky clean image, you know, and then all of a sudden found dead of an overdose. Is that the end of the story? Who knows? But regardless, it started becoming a thing that, like, the tabloids and the coverage, and then the spin zone and the politicians and the police in LA, like, just the widespread blurring of the truth had been in full effect even back then. So the story I really want to talk about is called the Arbuckle Affair. So there's a guy, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, who was, they described, a rotund farce comedy actor. Basically was on, the article I read said he was like on the same level as Chaplin, but we don't really know about this guy because of what happened. So he was charged with manslaughter and rape of, I guess, an actress, Virginia Rappe. And the reason I want to talk about this, it ties in directly to our old friend who I talked about the other night, William Randolph Hearst, who at the time was owner-operator of San Francisco Examiner and Los Angeles Examiner. And he used his old tactics of yellow journalism and sensationalism to basically make this man guilty in the court of public opinion without him even having gone to trial. He reported a lot of stuff that ended up not being true whatsoever. Arbuckle had 3 trials where I think the first 2 were, it was like a hung jury, and then finally he got acquitted, like he beat the case. But he was an actor at the studio. Then you have, you know, the guy who is in the media that has 0 integrity or morals whatsoever, who's willing to basically run with any narrative. He can be bought for any price. We already established that the other night. This guy who is the head of the studio clearly has the politicians and police in his pocket, and then obviously, like, Hearst is going to print whatever they want him to print. But the man didn't end up being guilty. Turns out he likely didn't commit these crimes that he was accused of, but he never worked again in Hollywood. His career basically was done. It's just like the irresponsibility of a few men trying to make a buck can just destroy another person's life. And it happens over and over again without people really seemingly caring. So right after the Arbuckle Affair, coincidentally, the same studio had a director, William Desmond Taylor, who was shot in the back in his apartment. And speaking of Ray Donovan, one of the, like, I guess, fixers from the studio and a bunch of other people, like, the cops allowed them onto the crime scene and it was completely contaminated. They removed the evidence and things that basically prevented people from knowing. There was a confession years later, but for the longest time, like, it prevented this case from being solved, and allowing the studio employees to basically contaminate the crime scene so that this guy who got killed probably, like, will never actually get justice for this crime, or his family, you know, like, instead of getting actual answers to it, William Randolph Hearst and the police and everybody else who wanted to speculate on what happened started to just go wild in the newspapers about all of these different wild theories. But one of the main theories was about a love triangle, where the newspaper was saying that he was in a love triangle with, like, two actresses, and one of them was older and the other one was younger, and it's the jealousy, and it just reminds me of, like, how familiar the old lust and sexual accusations when it comes to trying to frame people, you know, it's either drugs or some sex scandal, or somebody going crazy, or all of a sudden it's suicide or an overdose. And we're just so blindly willing to accept that that's always what's truly going on with these things. Like, it turns out that in no way was there a love triangle. Like, it just flat out wasn't true, but it sold a lot of newspapers and drug people into this story and there were things said about these people that wasn't true. But who knows who gave Hearst the story to go with in that direction, or if he did it on his own. But I think it's clear with both, like, Harry Anslinger and Hearst, who had the ties with the marijuana and the hemp and stuff, like, the thread still is there that I've been talking about. It's the same people and names that seemingly pop up. Right in the middle of it is the guy who controls media. There's a guy who I've established is corrupt within the government. Now we're talking powerful movie studios in Hollywood, in industry, all involved. Literally it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like, it's like 1 degree of separation in these stories, that all these people know each other and have proven to be of low morals and corruptible. But we don't ever see that they're all working together over and over again. So that was, like, quick synopsis on the Hollywood industry. There, literally, you could talk for days upon days about different stories that are all suspicious. They still use the same playbook. There's a reason that certain actors and actresses are no longer employable, or like, it's just it's the power and control that these organizations and these studios and all the money that's associated with it, like, they can just make or break people. And when they want to break somebody, they can just go to the corrupt person in media that they always have on the payroll, or the person in the judicial system, bribe them, pay them off, whatever they need to do. And then this narrative just gets... Nobody thinks that this many people could be all telling the same lie. To me, it's like, no, that's going on a wide scale basis, like right in front of our faces all the time. So, quickly talk about the music industry, specifically something called the death clause. This isn't conspiracy, like, this is factual, just doing the math, that certain artists become more valuable to record labels when they're dead, not alive, because they can then control and make money, profit off of the royalties and stuff in perpetuity. They basically own all of their music, and I don't think that's happens to be a coincidence once again, how all these musicians and stuff, just that lifestyle of rock and roll and drugs and sex and stuff, like, yeah, that certainly exists. But there's definitely a lot more that goes into the handlers and the people around them that are leading these artists and musicians down the wrong path to sell their creative rights to these people, just to be given a chance to make it big, not realizing that once they make it big, they're expendable. They're not the ones truly making the money anyway. But even on a bigger scale, I talked about the spiritual warfare and the things that these elites know, and why they even make it to the places they make it often. They know things that we don't. A lot of times, I talked about unaliving spells and the spell work that they're trying to do to get me to take my own life. Suicide spells. The depression spells. There's a lot more going on in this life than what I originally thought. Mental health is a lot more than just, like, how we view it. If you have all this creativity like musicians do or artists do. Somebody probably in a position of power they're always going to be manipulating and using you in one way or another. I'm sure I use a reference to the Trolls movie where they're stealing the essence. It's not an exaggeration. That's like what energy harvesting is. They're draining your life force. So like, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden, when I started to raise my vibration and my frequency, this flood of creative inspiration and ability that I never knew existed within me all of a sudden came flowing out of me. What does that mean? Like, what's the logical explanation that somebody who thinks I'm full of it would give for that? Because, as I said, when you're vibrating on a lower frequency, when you actually are still asleep and you're allowing this stuff to drag you down to a lower level, that's what allows them and their magic and their spell work to actually affect you. But as I was practicing what I preached and I was doing the right things, I was helping other people, my frequency kept rising. I kept learning, and then, I didn't know this stuff was going on when I was still combating some of it just because I was raising my vibration. It hasn't been till much more recently that I really understand the extent of it and how to combat it. But, I've said it before, I don't really necessarily care whether people believe me or not. It just is what it is. This stuff is occurring. It's prevalent in these industries, that's for certain. I'm just showing you a different perspective of what another explanation could be for why these things seemingly history repeats itself with some of these patterns. So, yeah, the death clause is that some people theorize that, Puffy had Biggie killed because he was worth more to him dead. Plenty of other, I don't have to waste too much time on it. It is a thing if you're curious about it. I urge people to not just I don't do that deep of dives into this stuff. The very idea of it is to provoke your own investigation and learning about this stuff. So I highly recommend looking into the death clause and it being a real thing that so many musicians and artists have talked about and have been probably deemed as like eccentric artists who are out there. But in reality, it's just business. They make more, these executives who are power hungry and controlling and probably narcissistic that lack empathy, don't care about human life. They can make more money. So how do we kill people to not look like we killed them? Overdose or suicide. People don't usually question it. Oh, that's just the lifestyle. Or he was a depressed musician. So that leads me into the 27 Club, which I gave the significance of the number 27 before in my life. But there's a few other things that the number 27 represents. Just weird coincidence, and this is how I know I'm on to something. When me and my ex met, I was like 30 years, I think. And she had mentioned how like young I looked. So it was a running joke that I was kind of like forever 27. That was just like the age that I said I was always 27. So that brings me to the 27 Club, which I'm beginning to think that I very well could have been like a name on that. If these people are these creative like geniuses that are in this club, the Hendrix and Morrison and Cobain, even like Amy Winehouse, or there's a bunch of them. Everybody knows the 27 Club. I talk all the time about the universe and giving us hints and symbols. I spoke about 27 being, specifically for me, that symbol, that a number that when I see, there's always a significance of why. There's a significance why I randomly picked 27 to be the age. It's for me to be able to actually know what I'm saying is on point. Like, I don't buy that they just all coincidentally overdosed or committed suicide at the same age. We're talking all of these artists who they're still remembered as like some of the greatest of all time. Who made money and continues to make money off of those people? If we find that out, I think we would probably be able to figure out like that there's more to the story than just random chance that history repeats itself. Age 27 is just the end of the road if you're a creative genius. Creativity is something that people covet. A lot of people lack. A lot of the people who are narcissists and are wearing the mask and are in power of these record labels and movie studios, they see talented people, they're jealous, they're envious, and they want, they're their cash cow, they're, you know, the golden goose. And if they're worth more to them dead than alive, they'll take them out. People made an assessment and a business decision that I was worth more dead to them than I was alive. That 100% happened. So, I'm not supposed to be talking right now. You might say that I'm a dead man walking. Like the Undertaker came out of the coffin, or like Jesus, I have risen. There's certain people who are supposed to be under the impression that I am not alive right now. So you can imagine they haven't succeeded in their numerous attempts before. They're weighing their options of allowing themselves to get caught or shutting me up for good. You'd imagine that I have concern about my daughter around these types of people who are willing to make that business decision. That's just the reality of the situation, though. Like many before them, they valued money over human life without blinking an eye. Friends, family, all these people that I cared about and I trusted. Bottom line is that's what they did. I don't really care if you believe me or you don't. That's what happened. That's exactly what's going to come out. So keep doubting it. Keep thinking you know people or how to read people or who people are. If you're that type of person who can't actually take a step back and allow yourself to truly hear what I'm saying, you'll have to look yourself in the mirror when this actually ends up being true. I'm moving forward and just doing my thing. Part of my future is to continue to educate people on this stuff. So when I'm telling these stories, it's not for my benefit anymore. It's for you guys to actually possibly understand that this isn't a joke. I'm already left all this behind me and I'm ready to start like living my life. Universe agrees. It's time for this stuff to come out. Time for a lot of people to look themselves in a mirror of why it was so hard for them to actually give what I was saying a chance to analyze it and look. Like, I've been going now for over a year, as I said, not backtracking on anything, and I'm just showing you examples of similar things that they're not speculation. A lot of the stuff, I mean, they happened. They're historical stories about things exactly like I'm talking about occurring. Listen to some true crime podcasts for a week. This stuff it happens all the time. It's commonplace. The fallacy that we fall into is thinking it never happens to us or around us. But it very much does, unfortunately. But anyway, the other day I mentioned something about San Francisco piquing my interest. Like, there's a lot of patterns I've been noticing with San Francisco popping up over and over again. I'll end it on this, that Bohemian Grove just so happens to be like 75 miles north of San Francisco. Whatever you think about Alex Jones, he snuck in there and, some weird stuff happens at these private, powerful gatherings that common people aren't allowed into. Same thing, all the secrets around Epstein Island. Conveniently, he committed suicide before he had a chance to talk. Yet we don't think, or at least a lot of people don't think, that conspiracies exist. They just happen throughout time, repeatedly, over and over again, and we know that they did. But no longer is that a possibility. Just tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with asking the questions and giving something thought. The most dangerous people that walk amongst us are the people that refuse to believe that their belief system could be wrong in any way. If you're around somebody like that, I'd be careful. That's a big red flag. I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody about any topic and hear them out and give it some actual real thought about what they said. Then make my decision. But I've been surrounded by a lot of people who, their way or the highway is like a phrase. So I jumped on the highway because their way, I found out, was pretty dark. But yeah, I have some other other things about San Francisco. You see where it leads. I'm not going to go into it more. It's already a long video, so it's what I do. I just see weird coincidences, and then I remember that coincidences don't exist. So I also remember that my intuition almost never fails. So if I have a hunch about something, typically just a matter of time before it turns out to be exactly what happens, or the thing actually was what I thought it was, just off of my instinct alone. So quick message to my ex-wife and in-laws who might be watching. It wasn't just a coincidence that I literally could predict the entire plot and how movies were going to end that I've never seen before. I can recognize where they're going. I can see the endings. It was right in front of your faces that I could actually see stuff. I wasn't actively even looking, but I was still processing it without even knowing. But I can sit back and recall the most minor interaction that made an antenna go up. And all of a sudden, I can see the entire plot that they were trying at that time. As I said, it's ingrained in my DNA. I was born to do this. Specifically born to take you guys down so that the rest of the world has a chance to heal and actually live a happy life, and we can be enlightened and experience life the way it's meant to be. As long as you guys keep doing the things that you're doing, that reality can't happen. So it's a pretty easy choice when you put it like that. So anyway, sun just starting to go down, and really all I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, I'm over this stuff. I'm just waiting for all the ducks to be put in a row, and then for the shoe to drop. But trying to help open up other people's eyes to the fact that, like, this is the absolute last thing I would ever do if I was just making it all up. If this was all, like, why would I do any of this? From the start, like, I spent 42 years ignoring the spotlight or speaking in public and stuff like that. Why would I put myself through this if what I'm saying isn't true? Why would I go this far out on a limb if it wasn't true? Like, hopefully by now, at the very least, you guys have been able to assess that I at least possess some intelligence. It sounds like it would be a really stupid decision for me to waste this much of my time on something that never even happened. And if it never really even happened, people sure are acting funny. I haven't had a conversation with these people, and everybody just dropped off the face of the planet when it comes to me. It's a weird thing. A lot of weird things going on. That's absolutely for sure. So, hope everybody had a good day. And yeah, I'll be on tomorrow for last day of class for this week. Haven't decided on the topic yet, but I'll come up with something meaningful. And see you guys tomorrow. Love you all. Have a good night.